Dear friends, today we reflect on one of the earliest and most powerful stories in human history, the story of Habeel and Qabeel. This is not merely a story about two brothers. It is a story about the human heart, about obedience and rebellion, about love for God and the danger of allowing jealousy to take control. From the very beginning, God showed humanity the difference between righteousness and sin. Through these two brothers we learn that every person faces a choice. We can choose humility, faith, and obedience, or we can choose pride, anger, and disobedience. The decisions we make shape our lives and affect those around us. The story of Habeel and Qabeel reminds us that sin often begins as a small feeling within the heart. When jealousy is not controlled, it grows. When anger is not surrendered to God, it becomes destructive. This ancient story continues to speak to our world today because the battle between good and evil still exists within every human heart. When the two brothers came before God with their offerings, an important lesson was revealed, a lesson that remains just as powerful today as it was in the beginning of human history. One brother brought his offering with sincerity, faith, and obedience, while the other brought his offering without the same devotion in his heart. God accepted the offering of Habeel, but he did not accept the offering of Qabeel. This event teaches us that God does not merely look at what we give, he looks at who we are. Human beings often focus on outward appearances. They look at wealth, success, position, and reputation. People are impressed by what they can see, but God sees far beyond the surface. He looks into the deepest parts of the heart, where motives, desires, thoughts, and intentions are hidden. This truth is important because many people believe that they can please God simply through outward actions. They may perform religious duties, speak the right words, or appear righteous before others, but God cannot be deceived. He knows whether our worship is sincere or whether it is only for show. He knows whether our prayers come from genuine faith or from empty routine. He knows whether our acts of kindness are motivated by love or by a desire to receive praise from others. Nothing is hidden from his sight, and every thought of the heart is known to him. The example of Habeel reminds us that true worship begins inside the heart. Before any offering reaches God, the condition of the person offering it matters. Habeel trusted God, respected him, and desired to honor him with his best. His offering reflected his faith and obedience. He was not simply giving something because he was required to do so. He was giving because he loved and respected God. His heart was in the right place, and because of that his offering was accepted. In our own lives, this lesson challenges us to examine ourselves honestly. When we pray, do we truly seek God's presence, or are we simply repeating words without meaning? When we worship, are we focused on God, or are we distracted by the opinions of people around us? When we help others, do we do it because we care for them, or because we want recognition? These are important questions because God values sincerity above appearance. A humble and faithful heart is more precious to him than the greatest display of outward religion. When Qabeel saw that his offering had not been accepted while the offering of Habeel had been accepted, a dangerous feeling began to grow inside his heart. Instead of examining himself, correcting his mistakes, and seeking God's guidance, he allowed jealousy to take control of his thoughts. What began as disappointment slowly turned into bitterness, and bitterness eventually grew into anger. This moment teaches one of the most important lessons in all of human history, because it shows how an unchecked emotion can lead to devastating consequences. Jealousy may seem small at first, but if it is allowed to remain in the heart, it can grow into something powerful and destructive. Every person experiences moments of disappointment. There are times when we see others succeed while we struggle. There are moments when someone else receives recognition, opportunities, or blessings that we hoped would come to us. During these moments, we face a choice. We can trust God and continue walking faithfully, or we can allow envy to take root in our hearts. The story of Qabeel warns us about the danger of choosing the second path. Instead of focusing on improving himself, he focused on what someone else had received. Instead of seeking God's mercy, he became consumed by resentment. Jealousy has a unique way of changing the way people think. It causes individuals to focus more on the blessings of others than on the blessings they themselves have received. It blinds people to their own opportunities and makes them believe that someone else's success is somehow their loss. Yet God's blessings are not limited. The success of one person does not mean there is less available for another. God has a unique purpose and plan for every life. Comparing ourselves to others only distracts us from the path God has prepared for us. As jealousy continued to grow in Qabeel's heart, it affected his thoughts and decisions. Instead of controlling his emotions, he allowed his emotions to control him. This is another powerful lesson for us today. Feelings themselves are not always sinful, but what we do with those feelings matters greatly. Anger, disappointment, and frustration can either be surrendered to God or allowed to grow into harmful actions. If they are not dealt with properly, they can influence our words, damage our relationships, and lead us away from wisdom. Many people spend their lives trying to impress others. They work hard to gain approval, admiration, and recognition. Yet the approval that matters most is the approval of God. Human praise is temporary. It comes and goes. People may celebrate you today and forget you tomorrow. God's approval, however, has eternal value. When we live to please Him, we find a peace that cannot be found through the opinions of others. The story also teaches us that God deserves our best. Habeel did not bring something ordinary or worthless. He brought his best because he believed that God was worthy of honor. In the same way, we should offer God our best efforts, our best attitudes, our best devotion, and our best obedience. Whether we are working, studying, serving others, or worshiping, we should do everything with a sincere heart. God is not impressed by how much we have. He is pleased by our faithfulness with what we have been given. As we reflect on this story, we are reminded that the heart is the foundation of every action. A pure heart produces faithfulness, kindness, obedience, and love. A sincere heart seeks God above all else. The lesson from Habeel's accepted offering is clear. God looks beyond the outward appearance and examines the heart. Therefore, let us strive to cultivate hearts that are humble, faithful, and devoted to Him. Let us seek His approval above the approval of people, and let us remember that the greatest offering we can bring before God is a sincere heart that loves Him, trusts Him, and desires to walk in His ways every day. One of the most tragic parts of this story is that Qabeel had opportunities to choose a different path. He could have humbled himself. He could have learned from his brother's example. He could have sought forgiveness and changed his attitude. Instead, he allowed pride to stand in the way. Pride often works together with jealousy. When people are unwilling to admit their mistakes, they begin blaming others for their problems. Rather than accepting responsibility, they look for someone else to blame. This mindset prevents growth and leads to further destruction. The story reminds us that sin rarely appears suddenly. It often begins with a thought, a feeling, or an attitude. If these things are not addressed, they grow stronger over time. A small seed of jealousy can become a large tree of bitterness. A moment of anger can become a lifetime of regret. This is why guarding the heart is so important. What we allow into our hearts today will influence the decisions we make tomorrow. In our modern world, jealousy remains a common struggle. People compare their lives, careers, achievements, possessions, and relationships with those of others. Social media often increases this temptation because people constantly see the highlights of someone else's life. As a result, many become dissatisfied with the blessings they already have. The story of Qabeel teaches us that comparison is dangerous. Peace comes not from comparing ourselves with others, but from trusting God's plan for our own lives. The answer to jealousy is gratitude and faith. When we thank God for what He has already given us, our focus shifts from what we lack to what we possess. Gratitude fills the heart with contentment, while jealousy fills it with frustration. Faith reminds us that God knows what is best for us, and that His timing is perfect. We do not need to compete with others for His blessings. Instead, we can trust Him to provide exactly what we need according to His wisdom and purpose. The tragedy of Qabeel's choice serves as a warning for every generation. Jealousy steals joy, destroys peace, damages relationships, and can lead people down a path they never intended to follow. The lesson is clear. We must guard our hearts carefully, surrender our disappointments to God, and choose faith over envy. When we trust God, celebrate the blessings of others, and remain faithful in our own journey, we find freedom from bitterness and discover the peace that comes from living according to His will. As we come to the end of this powerful story, we are reminded that the story of Habeel and Qabeel is not simply a story from the past. It is a message for every generation. It reveals the condition of the human heart and the choices that every person must make. Through Habeel, we learn the importance of sincere faith, humble obedience, and wholehearted devotion to God. Through Qabeel, we see the danger of jealousy, pride, anger, and unchecked sin. Their story teaches us that every decision begins in the heart, and the direction of our lives is shaped by the thoughts and attitudes we allow to grow within us. God is not looking for perfect people. He is looking for faithful hearts. He sees beyond our appearance, beyond our words, and beyond our actions. He examines our motives, our intentions, and our true character. Therefore, let us strive to live with honesty before Him, offering Him our best, not because we are forced to do so, but because we love Him and desire to honor Him. Let us choose humility instead of pride, gratitude instead of jealousy, and faith instead of bitterness. The tragedy of Qabeel reminds us that sin never remains small. When it is not confronted, it grows stronger and leads to consequences that can affect many lives. That is why we must guard our hearts daily, seek God's wisdom, and surrender our struggles to Him before they take root. Every day we have a choice. We can follow the path of righteousness and peace, or we can allow negative emotions to lead us away from God's purpose. Today, may we learn from the example of Habeel. May we bring before God a heart that is sincere, faithful, and obedient. May we celebrate the blessings of others without envy, trust God's timing without complaint, and walk in His ways with courage and conviction. When we do this, we experience the peace, joy, and purpose that God desires for our lives. May this story inspire us to examine our hearts, strengthen our faith, and draw closer to God every day. And may we leave with this simple but powerful truth: a heart devoted to God will always find His favor, His guidance, and His everlasting peace. Thank you, and may God bless you all.